Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for tonight's Ask the Experts panel discussion, which is the final webinar in our GSK series. We are so excited to hear from our amazing panelists who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience when it comes to quitting and cutting back smoking. And we're also excited that this webinar is taking place during National Addictions Awareness Week. So we're so glad to have you join us for this important and informative discussion. My name is Bethany Dick. I am the Health Promotion Coordinator with the Lung Association of Saskatchewan. It is my pleasure to welcome you and to be your host and moderator for this evening's panel. As we gather here today, I want to acknowledge that I'm hosting this webinar on Treaty 6 territory, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, as well as the territory of the Métis. I acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. Tonight's presentation is sponsored by GlaxoSmithKline, or GSK, a science-led global healthcare company with a special purpose to help people do more, feel better, and live longer. I am pleased to welcome Marie-Claude from GSK to bring greetings.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marie-Claude Desaulniers. I'm from the Patient Engagement, Advocacy, and Patient Affairs team at GSK. We're proud to support this series of 4 webinars that provide accessible, practical, and evidence-based information to help people to manage the lung disease, and with the hope of being able to do more, feel better, and live longer, just like GSK's mission. And the Lung Association of Saskatchewan is also focusing on its mission. So tonight's topic, Ask the Expert, is it your time to quit? The Lung Association is hoping to support people who are on their quit journey and those who are supporting people through quitting. Please do not hesitate to participate. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. To you, Bethany.
Awesome. Thank you, Marie-Claude. We are so grateful for your collaboration and support and the work that GSK does to help people feel and live better. The Lung Association offers a variety of online support groups, some of which have inspired our GSK webinar series. And our support groups include asthma, COPD, pulmonary fibrosis, COVID-19, lung cancer, lung transplant, sleep apnea, and the Saskatchewan Quit Smoking Cessation Support Group. Our Saskatchewan Quit support group consists of individuals all across Saskatchewan that are at various stages of their quitting journey. So whether you're thinking about quitting or you're in the process of cutting back or you've already quit or anywhere in between, we would love to have you join us on Facebook at Saskatchewan Quits. If you would benefit from the support of any of these groups run by the Lung Association of Saskatchewan, we encourage you to join. So tonight is all about the advice of our panelists when it comes to helping you on your journey to quitting or cutting back smoking. Throughout the next hour, if you have any questions for our panelists, please type them into the question feature of the webinar platform. You can find this feature in the control panel on the right side of your screen. Don't be shy to ask your questions. We would love to hear from you, and chances are that someone else has the same question as you, and we have a wealth of knowledge on our panel, and we would love for you to take advantage of that. I now have the pleasure of introducing our panelists for this evening. I'll start with Dr. Penz. So Dr. Erica Penz is an associate professor in the Division of Respirology, Critical Care, and Sleep Medicine at the University of Saskatchewan and the program director for the Respirology Training Program. She has a particular interest in smoking cessation and the interaction of vaping and smoking among youth, and is a co-founder and co-facilitator of Youth for Change, an education and advocacy youth group aimed at protecting children and youth from the harms of vaping. Next, we have Lynn. Lynn McKinnon is one of the 467 certified tobacco educators in Canada who to date have qualified as a CTE through the Canadian Network for Respiratory Care. She's completed the following specialty courses through the Centre for Addictions and Mental Health TEACH program: comprehensive course on tobacco cessation, integrated chronic disease management, and tobacco interventions with clients with mental health or substance use disorder. Next, we have Corey. Corey Gambler works with the File Hill Capels Tribal Council, which is situated on Treaty 4 territory. For the first 10 years with FHQ, he worked at a treatment center for First Nations youth who have had addictions affect their lives. Now, for the past 3 years, he's worked with FHQ Health Services, which provides services to 11 First Nations communities. Since being at FHQ Health Services, he's been in charge of running a tobacco cessation program. The program looks at helping people to cut down and or quit smoking by the use of NRTs or quit smoking challenges, also with cultural teachings from elders in the communities. Last but not least, we have Dale. Dale Roach is an ambassador for the Lung Association of Saskatchewan. After smoking for many years and after many attempts to quit, success was finally achieved. Dale knows firsthand how difficult quitting can be. And I can speak from experience that Dale is a wonderful ambassador in our Saskatchewan Quits Facebook support group and provides a lot of encouragement for people there. So thank you to all 4 panelists for joining us this evening. I'm so excited. So we're just going to dive into some questions. I've got a few here ready to go. But like I said, everybody who's on the webinar, please feel free to ask your questions in the question panel on the right-hand side. So my first question is going to be for Dr. Erica Pence. So this person said, I suffer from anxiety. How can I manage a flare-up of anxiety symptoms while withdrawing from nicotine? And I think that this question is so important. Like there's a myriad of reasons that anxiety is happening right now, and quitting smoking can be one of them, but you know, there's COVID, there's so many different things, and I think this is a great question to kick it off. How can we manage that while withdrawing from nicotine?
Thanks, Bethany. Yeah, gosh, anxiety, it's such a difficult and often just consuming feeling that people can have. And I think what's really important to know when you're on your quit journey and trying to quit smoking, and is that really, you know, you should anticipate that when we naturally withdraw from nicotine, that the feelings of anxiety may actually be accentuated, you know, particularly in the first few days, but it could actually last for a few weeks at a time until nicotine is completely out of your system. And so I think really, number one, people knowing and anticipating that they may actually have those feelings and that they may, and their anxiety may be worse, is actually really helpful right off the bat. So that it's not something that's going to be harmful or, you know, unexpected. But you know, I personally have experienced anxiety, and it can be a very overwhelming feeling. So in the moment, I think there are a number of things that can be done. So and really they're quite, I think, straightforward strategies. There's, you know, not really anything that's based in particular around medicine, but I think that some of the things that help myself and then also some of my patients has been breathing. So I think breathing, deep breathing exercises are great. I learned them through yoga. So the breathing exercise that I find has been really helpful has been that, you know, 5 seconds in, hold for 5 seconds and out, and then you repeat that. And I think that just allows us to sort of focus in on the moment. Other things that might work for people would be, you know, other forms of that would involve breathing. So meditation or yoga, if that's what you like. The other thing I should mention, and that we've got, you know, a lot of evidence for is exercise. So on the other hand, you know, if sitting and breathing doesn't necessarily work to control those anxiety feelings, some vigorous exercise, bursts of activity may actually be really helpful in alleviating some of those symptoms. So maybe I'll just stop there and see if also if Lynn or Dale or Corey have anything else that they would add to that.
This is Lynn speaking. So definitely you would want to treat it concurrently, where you just would look at the anxiety as well as the tobacco and see how they interplay, because a lot of people will use a cigarette in a moment of anxiety to calm down or to, and really I often remind them it's a way of distracting, and you're deep breathing and you're getting your mind off of things. You're taking that time out to relax. So if we can learn to do that without especially with smoking, without the cigarette or the vape, it would really be of benefit. So you want to kind of have those practice times. What can you do differently? Like you had mentioned, Dr. Pence, deep breathing, but just taking a real holistic approach, looking at, you know, if they've already got anxiety strategies in place for when a panic attack occurs, for example, what they do. We can build on those with CBT, that cognitive behavioral therapy. Some people do dialectical behavioral therapy too. Also, anxiety, and the studies you would know too, Dr. Pence, have shown that anxiety actually reduces after a person's quit for a significant period of time. They have more money. They're not worrying about where they can and cannot smoke. And the reports are, they didn't realize that smoking was actually making or compounding their anxiety.
Yeah, I know that there's a calculator, I think it's on Health Canada's website, that shows how much you would save if you were not smoking anymore or if you cut back. And like, I don't know about you, but money is always a stressor for me. So it's true, it can kind of compound, hey? And I think that the anxiety kind of comes from finances as well as a lot of different directions. So that's a really good point. Dale or Corey, anything to add?
I really like what Dr. Penn said about the exercise, because you can't take something away and not substitute something in its place. You have to be active doing something, and exercise is a win-win regardless. You can, your mind is occupied, your body is occupied, and the stress just dissipates from there. And it's just a win-win. So I really lean on that side too.
As a person that does have anxiety, I've been dealing with anxiety for probably about 5 years now. The one thing that I use for techniques is like others talked about, the breathing techniques, but also grounding yourself in that moment when you're having those panic attacks, anxiety attacks, learning how to ground yourself, because when you're at those high points, there's no sense of control, and you need to ground yourself in that moment. And then also with, like everybody else said, physical activity, it really helped me to keep my mind busy when those situations would come up. It just kind of wiped away right away. Whereas if I wasn't keeping physical, it would that panic attack would last longer. So those are some things that helped me.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And so that kind of leads into my next question. And this would be kind of for Dale and Corey, who've been on a quit journey and it's ongoing, we know. But did you have a replacement activity, and what was it? And so you both talked about exercise. Did you have anything else that you found really helpful when you were quitting or trying to quit to kind of replace that activity? Exercise is a huge one for sure. Any others?
For myself, I didn't. Exercise came after. I mean, had I known at the time, I got busy in my work. I did, many other things. I try and occupy myself with, not knowing that exercise would have been the a proper one to do. But and I, looking back, I definitely would go the exercise route now.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. Corey, what about you?
I think after probably the 10th time trying to quit, it was like, for me, it was more of a mindset. I had to come to that crossroad. We always talk about that in addictions counseling. There's a crossroad you're gonna meet, and that's what I end up meeting, is that crossroad. And I'm like, okay, enough is enough. I need to stop this. So when I did, I kept busy with family also. So being around positive influences, like people that were gonna take me out and do things with me, whether it's going to play pool or bowling, those are types of things that I would do to keep myself busy, because I found in the evenings was when I used to smoke quite a bit, right? Because you're at home, it's your downtime. So that's when you start to think of a lot of those stressors in the evening. So I try to keep myself busy more in the evening.
Yeah, for sure. That makes total sense. Question coming in from the question panel here. For Lynn or Corey, are there some age ranges that are more challenging to treat when it comes to when it comes to nicotine addiction? So that addictions counselor perspective, are there age ranges that are more challenging when it comes to nicotine addiction? Lynn, maybe we'll start with you and then we'll go to Corey.
I actually like what Corey just said. It doesn't matter what age sometimes. It's just you have to come to that place and you have to keep trying to quit. I've worked with individuals into their 70s that have quit, as well as I don't work with youth, but you know, all the way down to like 20s and 30s, and really, it's just to keep trying and accept that going back and forth. I'm a smoker, I'm a non-smoker. It takes time, right? And several attempts from many people. I'll let you go, Corey.
As far as me, like, for finding for difficulty, I would say probably late teens to early 20s. I would say that was my most hard time to help people to try and curb them from quit smoking. But I've always took the approach of getting whoever it was I was talking to with their journey to think 5, 10 years down the road, how is this going to affect you? And really kind of trying to paint that picture with them, get them to visualize how it's going to affect them later down the road. Like with the teenagers, a lot of them are athletes, you know, basketball players, football players, soccer, hockey. And I said, 5 years down the road, how are your lungs going to be? Are you going to be able to keep up with the other guys in junior B, you know, so on and so forth. So I really paint that picture and get them to look at that visually, think about that. And then they start thinking and they're like, wow, okay, I really kind of see that now. So that's my biggest thing is you got teenage years, the 15 to 22, 23 years old. So.
Yeah, between Lynn and Corey, we cover a lot of age range in terms of who you've worked with, hey, with addictions counseling. That's awesome. No, great answers. Thank you. And then that actually kind of segues into this next question. And you kind of already addressed it, Corey, in what if I've tried before and was unsuccessful? We've talked about multiple quit attempts, and then you talked about getting them to think into the future. And this is for all panelists. So what would you say to someone who has tried before, maybe multiple times, and was unsuccessful? How can they try moving forward? I'll maybe turn this one I'll send it to Lynn first, and then we'll go from there.
You know, that is one of the best things that a person can tell me is they've tried several times, because I'm like, yes, that means that you have the desire, and you just need to keep trying, and we'll keep tweaking everything. So sometimes you just don't know what will trigger a craving or that thought for smoking, and it's going to happen. Lapse or relapse is inevitable for many people, but it's more about what can we do now. It's a learning opportunity. So I actually I normalize it as what we all do, right? So.
Yeah, I love that. Dr. Pence, any thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and echo what Lynn's saying. I totally agree. I think well, I think it's important for people to know, and I talk about this in my clinic with my patients, is you know, there's studies that show on average that people will try 8 or more times, you know, in a lifetime. So, you know, to think that, you know that it's a failed if you start again. I don't view it as a failure. I think that it's definitely a process and a journey, as you say, and that we learn. So when you fall as a child, you help them get back up, and you learn from that. And I think the same can be said about that journey to smoking. So I really also try to normalize it with my patients and just say, let's actually now take the experience you've had from this past try or these past 3 other tries, and let's modify it, and then let's just see how it goes, because you know this is life, and there's always challenges and obstacles, but there's ways to get around them, and eventually something's going to stick. It will, like it just naturally will. I fully believe that, and I think it's really helpful when I'm talking with someone to say, yeah, I actually believe that this will work at some point. And if it doesn't, right, and you come back to my clinic and I ask you, you know, that's the thing with my patients is oftentimes, you know, some of them have been afraid to say if they've failed in quotation marks, and I'm like, you never have to be afraid to tell me that, you know, you went back, because this is an opportunity for us now to talk about the next plan.
Awesome. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I was gonna add to that, but I totally forgot my train of thoughts.
If it comes back to you later, just jump in.
I
I
will.
had that happen about 10 times today. So
And
no
you know,
worries.
Bethany, that I tried multitudes of times to quit, and I tried everything that I could to do it. And just like the two ladies said, you just keep going, keep going. Tomorrow's another day. Maybe it'll be an hour, maybe it'll be 3 hours, maybe it's 2 days, maybe it's 5 days. Eventually, it's gonna kick. You're gonna get it. Just
Yeah.
don't give up.
I like that, Dale.
And that, wow, the transitions are beautiful tonight because the next question is for Dale. Was there a pivotal point in your life when you made the decision to go on your quit journey, and are you comfortable sharing? And Dale, I've heard your story before and I would love if you would share it. And to kind of build on that question, so what was the moment where you decided to go on your quit journey? And then I'd love for you to share, if you're willing, when you did officially quit, because it's an amazing story if you don't mind sharing.
Well, my story is quite long, but the short version is my kids hated me smoking. My wife hated me smoking. If I left a package of cigarettes on a coffee table or somewhere, I'd get up in the morning and there'd be a little pile of tobacco where the kids would break them in little piles, break them all up. They would draw lungs and color them black and put them on my refrigerator so that I would see that. They hated it, just hated it. And being who I was, you know, I just fought that and kind of disregarded it. And the biggest regret of my life now is you know, not paying attention to it. But eventually, you know, it was getting to me. It was bothering me. I was getting short of breath, and I wanted to quit. I wanted, you know, I was scared. I really thought it was going to shorten my life, and you know, my family history was the longevity was not all that great. So I didn't want to become one of those statistics, and quitting smoking was the only thing that I knew of, and trying to get into shape. But yeah, I tried, as we've said, many times, and many different methods of trying. And the bottom line was that fear was the one that eventually got me to stop. And I honestly thought I was going to die. And I said, if I wake up, I will never smoke again.
Wow. I love hearing your story, Dale. Very powerful. Thanks for sharing. I'll turn that question also over to Corey, if you're willing to share a little bit about, because you had kind of mentioned, you know, you hit that crossroads, and do you want to share a little bit more about that? Like, what kind of was your pivotal moment for starting your quit journey?
Honestly, like I didn't smoke for long. I think it was probably about maybe 6 years. So it wasn't that long. It was something that I say probably just a phase like everybody goes through, right? Um, I remember my pivotal point was when, when I was born with asthma. I was premature, 3.5 months. So I had asthma for first 3 years of my life. I could not breathe properly. I was a twin brother. My twin brother passed away at birth also. So my lungs weren't developed, you know, fully, right? So as getting older, you know, doctors always say you're not going to develop properly. You're going to always have a hard time breathing. And like everybody else, we experimented with things, you know, experimented with smoking, started smoking, and it turned out about 6 years. And then I got to my point where it's like my grandmother walked in and she's seen me. This is when you could smoke in restaurants, so you could tell how old it was. I was in there on a break and smoking, and she come to me and she said, "Why are you doing that?" And I was kind of looking at her puzzled, like, you know, not knowing what she was talking about. And she's like, "Why are you doing that when, you know, Creator healed you? He made your lungs better." And I kind of looked at her, and right there and then it just clicked in. That was my crossroads. That was my pivotal point where, okay, enough is enough. And I took that half a pack of smokes and I put them in the garbage and I never looked back. Now, with that being all said, yes, it was still hard. I still had cravings every single day. And I worked in the food industry, so you get a downtime, you go out for a cigarette, right? But I just took those moments when everybody was out there. I took those moments to keep myself busy in the kitchen, to do prep and things like that. So that was my pivotal point, was my grandmother saying, "You need, why are you doing that?" Right? So.
Wow. Yeah, powerful story as well. Thank you for sharing that. And then I have a question of my own to kind of build on that. You mentioned that your grandma spoke about the creator, and in your bio, we heard about how you integrate some cultural practices, helping people quit. What are some examples of those that you use in the communities that you work in?
Well, the main one that we usually like to try go to is sweat ceremony. And with sweat ceremony, there are certain guidelines and things that you have to follow before you enter the sweat lodge. And that's to be, like, one of them is you need to remain drug and alcohol free for 4 days before you enter that sweat. Elders have talked about when you go into the sweat, your spirit is in there with you. So that's one of the things that I like to use. And I've seen that with working previous in the treatment facility with the boys. We would take them into the sweat. They wouldn't know because they, not knowing their culture was really, really low for them. So them going to a sweat, going to that first sweat to going to the last sweat, that really helped them with that journey of them quitting smoking, right? So we would in turn use that sweat ceremony in a different way. We'd give them tobacco, but we'd tell them, okay, you need to take that tobacco, that one smoke, that cigarette, and break it in half. And you need to take it and you need to pray with that tobacco. You need to honor that tobacco. It's not to be smoked. You need to honor that, and you need to put that in the fire, and you need to pray for your loved ones. You need to pray for anybody that you know that's going through any illness, sickness, anything like that. That's what you use that tobacco for. You don't smoke it just because it's a cigarette and you got it as a gift. You need to use that tobacco as prayer. And as First Nations and Aboriginal people, we use tobacco in prayer quite a bit, whether it's Sundance, Rain Dance, Sweat Lodges, Shaking Tent, all the ceremonies, we always start with tobacco.
Yeah, that I learned a lot just now. Thank you for that, for sharing that, those practices. I think that's amazing, and that's so great that it's so helpful. The next question is for Dr. Pens. This is a really interesting one, and our colleagues have talked about how we could do a whole webinar on vaping, and so this kind of ties the two together. In your practice or experience, has it been any different treating nicotine addiction from a person that smokes versus a person that vapes?
Thank you. So I'll maybe start by saying that I've definitely had a lot more experience in helping someone quit tobacco than I have had individuals try to quit vaping. And part of that is, just kind of thinking about where my practice sits. And so the majority of individuals that I see in my clinic have had a long history of tobacco use, so smoking of primarily cigarettes for my patients, and many of them have actually used vaping to try and quit smoking themselves. So some of the conversations that I've had with my patients have actually been around the role of vaping in helping them to quit smoking. Not so much the next step, which is, once if this has been something that, they've decided to do, and we could talk about sort of the evidence and things like that at another time, but once they've made that decision, the first thing that I try to emphasize with my patients is you have to, just like we've decided to quit cigarettes and set a quit date for that, and you've substituted nicotine replacement through vaping. The next step is you have to set a date for quitting vaping. So because what we have seen in the literature is that many people end up doing a replacement. So and yes, there are, when you think about the thousands of chemicals that are burned in cigarettes, that is not the same as vaping. We have studies that show that the chemical burden and the TSNA, so the tobacco specific nitrosamines, or the cancer causing chemicals, from that are much lower in vaping. The problem is that I have with ongoing vaping is right now we just don't have enough evidence to know its long-term safety, and that's why I don't yet recommend it for my patients. We also have limited evidence around actually its effectiveness in helping people to quit smoking long-term. So there's a little bit of evidence out there, but there's not a lot of good quality evidence. So a lot of my discussion is just around trying to inform my patients about that. But the reality is with vaping, if you're vaping with nicotine, you know, if you stop vaping, you still have the potential for the withdrawal symptoms that are associated with nicotine. And so really the discussions around how to manage that withdrawal and manage the craving that comes after is actually very similar.
Yeah, for sure. Anything to add, like Corey or Lynn, with your addictions background, any comparison with smoking and vaping when it comes to people quitting nicotine, or any other advice?
I love what you said, Dr. Pence, because a lot of people do start to substitute, and what they've done then is gone from using the nicotine through a cigarette and getting the drug that way to getting it through the vaporizer, which is not always a healthier alternative. And I know that the studies have shown, like you had said, that there's less chemicals, but we don't know the long-term impact yet. And now that was the same with smoking. It was no big deal. But now we have so much evidence, an alarming amount, that it is. And that may come to pass over time with vaporizers. We don't know. However, nicotine, there are safe administration routes until someone is able to slowly wean down, right? And that's like, we can actually give people the drug that produces the craving, the nicotine itself, through patches or the gum or the lozenge or the sprays now. So there's so many options, and it's just making them understand they just are really missing the act of smoking.
Yeah. Corey, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Working with youth, you would probably see quite a few people who would vape. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I often hear it a little too much, especially with people that have smoked just, a short time in their life, trying to go to vaping and as a substitute and, try to cut down. I've always recommended to them, if you haven't tried all of the NRTs that are available, for you, especially for First Nations and Aboriginal people, it's often, free for us to try, right? So that is my first option, is always to try these NRTs, and a lot of times they'll come to me and they'll say, I've tried them all, So and I just tell them, straight out, it's just we don't know what the long-term effects of it. We just need to be careful of the levels of nicotine within there, because some of them are quite high, right? So, but especially with our youth, we're starting to see a lot of our youth experimenting with and not knowing the levels of that. So that's when the education comes. The part for me is to educate them, get them to understand. But with that being said, our youth are very smart. They know what they're using. They know, that they would probably get dependent on the nicotine faster, whereas if they were smoking, so again, I try to paint that picture for them, try to get them to help them to understand, how it's going to be for you, 3-5 years down the road. So yeah, but I see quite a bit. So
Bethany, is it okay if I just jump in and just off of Corey's comments, because I think they're right on. The issue around the concentration of nicotine in vaping really is something that I think needs to be emphasized when we're talking with young adults, people in their early 20s, where I wonder, you think about the Juul device, which is quite popular and around and accessible to everybody for such a long time before they recently enforced some regulations. And the issue that people don't know is, a pack of cigarettes. So if you think about, you smoke one cigarette and you think there's about a milligram of nicotine that ultimately gets into the system. And if you have a pack of 21 or 25, that would be 25 milligrams in a day. With the Juul device and some of the other larger vaping devices, in Canada, we're allowed to sell up to 60 milligrams per milliliter of nicotine. And so if someone, for instance, happened to go through a Juul device that's 50 milligrams per mil and their pod in one day, that would be almost 3 packs of, equivalent of smoking 3 packs of cigarettes of nicotine. And so it's wild. And think in a young developing mind, right, exposure to that intensity of and concentration of nicotine, the potential for hardwiring that addiction, I think is much greater. So I really worry about especially young brains getting exposed to that level of concentration, not being aware, right, that hasn't been limited is really important.
Yeah. Great insight. Thanks, everyone. Next question is posed to the whole panel. Would you recommend cutting back as a start to your quit journey and weaning down to 0, or trying to quit altogether at once? So I'll maybe start with Lynn on this one, and then we'll kind of work our way around.
I can recommend just about anything, but it really is a journey that the person's going to have to go through. And I have to respect that. Some people will try totally to stop and not have anything and they'll fail, right? And that's fine. They tried that way. Others try cutting down, and then they can maintain it, but then they start creeping back up to the numbers again. And again, every opportunity that they take to not smoke is helping them manage another area of their life without a cigarette. So whether to me, it really doesn't matter, but what does work is eventually you just have to let it go. And I've had several people, it's kind of mystifying actually, they'll have all these several attempts, and they'll look at me and they'll say, my last attempt, it was so easy. It was not a struggle. And that's what I hear a lot so the several attempts, whatever they look like. Yeah.
Corey, what are your thoughts on, slowly declining, quitting cold turkey, as some say? What are your thoughts?
I just kind of wanted to echo what Lynn was saying. It honestly, it varies from person to person. Usually when I'm talking to someone and they're trying to quit, I usually get their story of I try to get the whole story of when they started, how long they've been smoking, have they tried other options, and then I kind of get that, and then I kind of go to them and say, okay, have you tried to wean off? Well, I have, but I didn't get really far. Okay, have you tried quit cold turkey? No, I haven't. So I was like, okay, well, I'll try either or and see how you are for the first 2-3 days, right? Because our bodies are going to tell us, right? That addiction to that nicotine is going to tell us how much we can bear without, I guess, tearing someone's head off or, biting a family member. You know what I mean? It's just, it varies from person to person, right? I know when I quit that cold turkey time, it was really hard for me, and I was getting very, very irritable and taking out on people, my loved ones. But like I said, it just varies from person to person and their goal, right?
Yeah, for sure. Dr. Pence?
I actually, my pragmatic and practical side, 100%, and in practice, my approach is the same as what Lynn and Corey are saying. I think that what we hear around our tobacco cessation guidelines, in the past have highly recommended, cold turkey and abrupt cessation. Recommending that as practitioners over, a weaning down approach. And some of those recommendations might be based in some evidence. Having said that, I think that to be quite honest, when it comes to face-to-face with an individual and recognizing everything that we do is tailored at that moment in that person. So a guideline speaking to, you know, masses and populations, and that's fine. Consider that, but I sort of side with Lynn and Corey in my approach. I think that it will vary on the individual, and it will work for one individual over another, and that's absolutely fine.
For sure. Dale, do you have any thoughts? I know you've talked about having multiple quit attempts, and then one day it was over. What are your thoughts?
Well, everybody's on a different journey, and you don't know what else is affecting their life. Just so many things that come into play where, you know, it might be finances, it might be health, it might be a relationship, you know, just as everyone else has said, everybody's in a different spot, everybody's an individual, and there's not a one fits all solution. So everybody just hang in there and try again. Just keep trying, keep trying.
Yeah, awesome. Next question is for Dale or Corey. So having, you know, going through the quit journey, what are some do's and don'ts for friends and family who are trying to support you in your quit journey? So what would you recommend to people who are supporting? What should they do? What shouldn't they do? What annoyed you? That kind of stuff. Maybe we'll start with Dale and then we'll go to Corey.
I immediately thought of what Corey said. The first people that try and help us are the ones that bear the brunt, because we're not really friendly when we're trying to quit, and by any means. And you know, you say some nasty things. You're not a really nice person. It's a horrible thing to go through, and they're trying to help you, but you don't look at it from that point of view, and they only see the ugly side of you that is rearing its head. And all I would say to someone that's trying to help them, the person that you're trying to help is not going to be themselves. That's part of the disease that's barking at you and yelling and telling you to get out of their face. And just hang in there. I mean, they need all the support that they can get, and don't, you know, be patient, but stay with them. Just help them through it, guide them. It's just sort of, you hold it by the hand, but hold it gently.
Nice, well said. Corey, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, it's just understanding that that support, whether it be family or friends, that they're there, that they're thinking about your health and how it's affecting you. You know, just trying your best to get through those withdrawals and you know, those times of really wanting that cigarette, is looking at yourself and how it's affecting you. I often tell people, okay, well, how did you manage your stress and stuff like that before you started smoking? And they would kind of look puzzled at me. Well, I used to go to the casino, you know, or things like that, and it's not the best, you know, alternative. But I'd always get them to really look at what can I do, and you know, and understanding the supports are there to help you. It's just is understanding they care about you. They want to see you succeeding, quitting, right? So that's, I think that's the biggest thing, whether it's your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your mom, your dad, your grandpa, whoever it may be, just through that journey. And it's going to be sometimes it could be a short one. Sometimes it could be, you know, quite long. You know, it's all from person to person, right?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much. We have a couple questions in the chat, and I don't know how to message people directly, and so I'm just going to say this, that somebody asked a question referring to Corey's comment about the sweat ceremony, and I'm not totally sure I understand the question. Do you mind asking again and just reframing it, just so that I make sure that I get it right? I'm just not totally sure I understand. So if you don't mind asking the question again, just reframing, but in the meantime, I'll go to another question that's in the chat. For Corey or Lynn, but I'd love to hear from everybody on this one as well. Do you have some go-to resources to suggest to people who are on their quit journey? So I'll start with Corey and then go to Lynn, and then yeah, I'd love to hear from Dr. Pensendale as well. You know, kind of multiple facets of this. So we'll start with Corey. What are some resources that you would suggest for people on a quit journey? Oh, I can't hear you. You might be on mute.
There we go. Honestly, I would say like with the age now where we're into technology, so there's tons of resources online. I know when I was kind of in the in between part of it, I would go to YouTube of all things and look up, like breathing techniques and things like that, and follow through with those things. So I would look online a lot of times for the research resources and stuff like that. That'd be kind of my go-to, and I refer people to like information, and stuff like that online with the Lung Association and things like that, right?
Yeah, awesome. Lynn.
I actually am a lot like Corey. Whatever's available. So, and I've just got to hold this up because this was one of my big go-tos back in the day. You recognize this, Bethany? So this is from the Lung Association. It's everything in there still is workable, right? And it all has the same information. This used to be, I don't know if it's still available, My Journey. So that was particularly developed for Indigenous use. So it talks about traditional, just like Corey said, if they don't understand what sacred tobacco is, how can they make it sacred? So it's all about teaching. So that needs to be done, obviously, like you do with Corey, with elders and everything, right? It's about making plans, and you can do it. Health Canada has resources, Cancer Society, the Lung Association. It's just whatever's available. Because I'm connected with the TEACH program in Ontario, I actually often will use their books or downloads, right? So, yeah. Your pharmacist would have ways too. We still use disease interrupted, and that's often for healthcare professionals, but it's a good one still for pretty much anybody. So lots of different things. It's about developing awareness first. When do you smoke? Why do you smoke? What does it make you feel? How do you feel afterwards? How do you feel before? And then where can you smoke? Where can't you smoke? Because that's going to come into play, especially if you're trying to quit. It's almost easier to do where you can't smoke. And that's just about most places right now. And then those hard and fast places where you do smoke, we start to create, what can you do in that moment instead of, like, a lot of people will get in their vehicle, the first thing they do, even sometimes before they start their car, would be light up a smoke. Now, we've been fortunate that there's now a law that you can't smoke in a vehicle with children. I think it's under 16 now, right? So that helps people make changes, believe it or not, that they never thought they would ever do before. So we can kind of identify where, it isn't available or accessible anymore, and you've managed to function in those areas. We'll figure out a way for you to do that as well. So, yeah. So the plan, and then sometimes even having a practice quit date. Or practice prior, just to kind of see what it feels like. A lot of people, withdrawal can be very intense for some people. I've had people say to me, and I really believe it, they think they're going to die. It's horrible the first time you ever try going without a cigarette. So if they experience that, that's got to be worked through too, because that can create a lot of anxiety to not really want to try again, right? Yeah. And definitely having those strategies again. How are you going to manage your stress? And there's so many different layers to stress management. It isn't just about deep breathing. It isn't just about exercising. Sometimes it's going to be engaging another sense, like music or something tactile, like playing music, right? So.
Yeah, thanks for having all those resources on hand. You could kind of give us a visual. That's awesome.
I live by this stuff, so.
Awesome. Dr. Pens, any additional resources that you could kind of share with the group?
Gosh, no, Lynn just hit it out of the park. No, those were fantastic. And so I personally have always used referred to the Lung Association website as my sort of starting point for many of my patients. That's sort of my trusted go-to resource. The one thing though, I have had you know, a number of my patients talk about some books that have been really impactful to them, and I don't have them written down, but I was just curious whether either Lynn or Corey or Dale or anybody on the call has read books that have actually helped them in that journey. So for some people, I find that that's been actually, you know, their really good tool to help them.
Yeah, that would be Alan Carr's book. And I'm going to forget the name. I think it's just called Quit Smoking. A lot of people have quit using that strategy, and you literally just start the book. You don't worry about quitting. You just start reading, and by the end of the book, many people say, I don't want this. All right, so they're done. So that's one of them that I know of.
Maybe we can kind of pool all of our resources, and when we email everyone after the panel, then we can send a whole resource bank.
Yeah, I just remembered it's called Easy Way to Quit Smoking.
Okay.
It must be easy to remember for some reason.
That's funny. Dale, any resources that were helpful for you?
Well, the main thing that in my mind is communication. Just talk to people. People that have been there. I like the idea of if you get a buddy that's going through the same thing or been through the same thing, somebody that you can rely on and give them a call and, you know, like, let's go have a coffee because I really want to have a cigarette right now. Or I've been through a 12-step program, so I've got that kind of a background where, you know, I needed that. You can't do it by yourself. You need help, and communication is just an easy way to do it. Just talk to somebody, and then you know you're not alone. You're not the only one fighting this demon, and they're going to have ideas that you haven't thought of yet, or they're just going to remind you of things. You know, the cost of cigarette smoke. You know, when I smoked, they were 37 cents a package. You know, I mean, I don't know what they are now, but I mean, when I started smoking, I should say. But I know that I have a 10-year-old grandson, and he used to say, Grandpa, you stink. They smell terrible. And they do. They really do. And, you know, that cost, the dry cleaning, your health, your dental. I mean, it all affected by smoking. And communication, you know, you're going to be reminded about all that stuff. And it's just going to make it all more worthwhile.
Yeah, well said. All right, we have a few more questions in the chat here. I hope that we can get to all of them. If we can't, then we'll definitely follow up with people. But the next question is, so yeah, this is the question, Corey, kind of responding to your comment about the sweat ceremony. I have tried over and over again to quit smoking, but have never thought of preparing myself in the same way I would if it was for a sweat. Do you have any advice or thoughts on that?
I could kind of just speak the first time myself going to a sweat ceremony. When I grew up, I didn't know my culture at all. So working at the previous treatment, I started to learn all about what the sweat was, how it is built, you know, how to get the willows and get the rocks. There was steps for everything that we've done, and to get from point A to point, you know, Z or whatever you want to call it. There's always steps. So when I got into that sweat, the first thought was, it is very, very overwhelming because you're sitting in there and it's complete darkness. The only thing you can see is the glowing of the rocks. So one of the things I did when I was in there, I would concentrate on those rocks, even though they were hot, because you pour water on there while you're in there, and it gets hot. It's hotter than any type of sauna that you've ever been in. It's times 100 of that, right? So I start concentrating on little things like that. And when you're in sweat ceremony, you're told to pray. You're told to, you know, talk to the spirit helpers, you know, your grandmothers, people that have passed on to help you in that moment. So when I look at the sweat ceremony and I look at people trying to quit, if we can connect ourselves in that way spiritually, we can overcome that hurdle. Because once I start closing my eyes and start praying and listening to the drum and the elders singing in the sweat, everything pretty much went away. I didn't feel the heat. I didn't, feel the darkness. I didn't feel like I was alone. I felt like I was surrounded by lots of good people and the spirit helpers, the grandmothers, the grandfathers. Once I connected my spirit to that, and I think that's a lot of times when we miss that when we're trying to do things, not only just quit smoking, but everything in life. We don't have that same connection. We lack that connection. So I think if we can connect ourselves spiritually to what I want to do, I think you're going to have a better outcome.
Yeah. Oh, that was beautifully said. Thanks, Corey. So we have a few minutes left. I'll try to get through a couple of these questions, but panelists, by all means, give your robust answers. Continue to do so, even though we just have a short while left. The next question wasn't posed to any specific panelists, so just feel free to jump in if you've got something to add to this. Can you speak to how mindfulness and meditation can help someone's quit journey? So Dr. Penz, you did kind of speak to this a little bit earlier, but yeah, if anyone wants to kind of speak to mindfulness and meditation on the quit journey.
I don't know, Lynn, perhaps you've had, more experience than that. I'm actually from a mindfulness and meditation point of view, I would consider myself a newbie to that area. So I've, started many years ago learning from a friend who's, very experienced in this, and have found it actually not an easy process to go through. So personally, I can't speak to that experience, but what I do know that there's so much benefit to, and we're thankfully, there's been huge research growing around mindfulness, meditation, and the health benefits that we see in this area, mental health, but physical benefits too. So I think that I don't know of any studies that have specifically, explored, an intervention around mindfulness and meditation with smoking cessation and how that impacts outcomes. But I think it would be a beautiful study to do. And I absolutely believe that there would be benefits to it. It's just out of my area of expertise. Maybe I'll stop there and see if other people have more experience than I.
So for myself, I don't usually do a lot of mindfulness therapies with people, but there are components of it that are beneficial. Even just kind of learning how to ride through a craving in a moment, because even if you've quit for decades, out of a blue, one day will just not be a good day. And Dale, you mentioned 12-step. They have this hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Just one day something will hit you, and you said cigarettes smell bad. Maybe that one day they're going to smell amazing, right? So you just have to take those deep breaths, feel the feeling, acknowledge it, don't judge it, and then make a determination. You can, if you have a craving, you could go have a cigarette, but you could also make a choice to do something different in the moment, and that's where that delay and distract come in. So mindfulness has its place. Again, it's not what my whole philosophy would be around in helping someone, but absolutely a place.
Any other thoughts on that question? Okay, so we do have a number of comments and questions in the chat here, and I see that it's 7:59. I wish that we had hours to discuss with you guys. You have so much great information to share with us. But I will just ask one last question, and I'll ask all of you to answer it, and obviously keep it quite brief. But what is the most helpful tip or the thing that you would say to somebody who's on their quit journey. So I'll start with Dale, and then I'll kind of prompt the other panelists. We'll end it there, and then I'll make sure that we address the rest of the comments and questions in just a second.
My comment would be, you're not alone, and it may take you 10 times, it may take you 20 times. Do not quit. Keep trying. Keep trying.
Amazing. Thanks, Dale. And Dr. Penz?
Yeah, I would actually echo what Dale has said. I think that's truthfully the most important thing that someone can hear.
Awesome. And Lynn?
I love the never quit quitting. Keep going until you get it right. And there's lots of supports and lots of programs out there, as you've heard through today. So.
And Corey?
Just continue to reach out for support, reach out for help. You know, there's just like everybody else said, there's lots of help out there. And just try, one thing I always used to do is try to remind myself what it was like before I started smoking. Try to remind yourself, okay, there was a time where I didn't smoke. I want to get back to that me, you know. So doing it for that, I guess that little me inside me, I want to go back to that one. So.
Great. Well said, everyone. So on that note, that is all the time that we have for this evening. So thank you so much, Corey, Lynn, Dale, and Dr. Penz for sharing your knowledge and your time with us. It's been amazing. I've learned so much. I hope that our participants have as well. A big thank you to our sponsor, GSK, and to all of you who attended. We really hope that this discussion tonight can support you on your quit journey. If you're not already a member of our Saskatchewan Quits Facebook support group, we certainly hope that you'll join us. To find out more, you can just search Saskatchewan Quits on Facebook or visit lungsask.ca and find support groups there. Or you can email me. My email address is listed on the slide there. And if you have a question for our panelists that you didn't get a chance to ask this evening, I also see that there's some that we just didn't have time to address. We'll make sure that we'll follow up with you. Send me an email and I'll get an answer for you from our panelists. Lastly, I am seeing some questions and comments coming in regarding being able to watch this again. We are recording this webinar and it will be sent out in the following week or two, and I'll try to accompany that with some resources. A couple people have chimed in with the title of Alan Carr's book and other resources as well. So I'll try to kind of put a bit of a bank together and send that out with the recording of the webinar. And then after that, we encourage you to share your feedback with us. Was this webinar helpful for you? Did you benefit from the panel discussion? So my email is there. Please reach out. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, from our panelists to our participants, and have a wonderful night. Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.